and welcome to Bridging the Gap to Life, a webinar hosted by Sierra Donor Services to celebrate National Multicultural Donor Awareness Month. So just a little bit of background, more than 105,000 people in the United States are waiting for life-saving organ transplants. Nearly 60% of the transplant waiting list comprise of people of color. The National Minority Organ Tissue Transplant Education Program, otherwise known as MOTEP, first founded the week-long observance in 1996 to bring heightened awareness to donation and transplantation in communities of color, focusing primarily on African American, Hispanic, Asian Pacific Islander, and Native American communities. 25 years later, we are continuing to face disparities in donation. There are over 23,000 Californians and 600 Nevadans on the transplant waiting list, and over 78% of them are people of color. Today, we will learn about the issues in our region and celebrate the gift of life from our local community leaders, transplant recipients, and donor families. First, please join me in welcoming the Mayor of Elk Grove, Ms. Bobbie Singh-Allen. Welcome, Mayor Bobbie Singh-Allen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here with all of you today. Just want to thank Sierra Donor Services for all the tremendous work that you do, helping to save lives throughout our region.
Well, we can't do it without the partnership with our community leaders like you. As you may have heard, 78% of California and Nevada's organ donor waiting list comprises of people of color, and this includes Asians and Pacific Islanders who ironically often work in healthcare and are still reluctant to become organ donors. Yeah. So we're so happy to see Asian Pacific Islander leaders like yourself really, using your platform to spread awareness. Here's a picture of you giving us the proclamation in April for Donate Life Month.
Yes, I mean, it's certainly, to the extent that I can use and lend my voice to elevate awareness, particularly as an API leader. I know that we have some of the lowest rates for donations. And, it's a personal story for me. My son, 22 years ago, he was born with a heart condition. And while he did not need a transplant, it was a wake-up call as a mother of bringing more awareness to what's happening in our bodies and the importance of intervention and early awareness of, sort of what our bodies can be going through. I know in terms of our culture, I'm an Indian American woman, and we just don't have a lot of educational awareness on the need for donations. And it wasn't until my son was really in critical care where I saw in the hospital other children that were just waiting for their transplant. And that mother inside me, the mother lens, couldn't help but wonder what their fate might be. While my son, at the tender age of 2, had open heart surgery, and is a thriving 22-year-old now, and is a senior at Sac State, there are many parents I know that unfortunately did not leave UC San Francisco or did not receive the donation that they needed. And I know that there's some sort of, there's cultural norms and perhaps ideas of what it might mean for being an organ donor with different, the different faiths, and perhaps the mindset that if we don't leave this world completely intact, then what does that do for our soul? And are we truly at rest? And we have opportunities to have that dialogue.
Absolutely.
To sort of break down those misconceptions. And it was a learning experience for me too. I was not a donor until later in life. And it wasn't until I saw my son in critical care on life support with literally every inch of his body had something coming out of it.
Wow.
And that's where I sort of reassessed my own lived experience and what I thought to be true. And that if I had an opportunity to save anybody's life, and to put aside maybe any expectations or thoughts that I had,
Right.
And I think these are conversations that need to take place, particularly in my community,
Absolutely.
in the Indian American community, because I know a lot of us aren't donors. And this is where, until somebody is on life support or needs a transplant, only then do we become more aware, until some sort of tragedy strikes. It was my story.
Right.
So we have an opportunity to be proactive about this, because as you mentioned, those horrific statistics, there are so many people that need our help. And you
Absolutely. And
hear
Mayor
from
Bobbie.
a great story from one of my constituents, Chris Matteo, who's a living testament and a hero of what it means to get that second chance in life. So if I can use my voice anywhere to bring more awareness for the need for being an organ donor and registering, but also being able to provide life-saving, help right now, living, not only through maybe a bone marrow match, but kidney transplant and other life-saving measures that can take place while we are living.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mayor Bobbie. And we will look forward to seeing you at the Multicultural Fair in
Yes.
Elk Grove pretty
All right. Well,
soon.
thank you. I have to resume my free. I have another obligation, but I wanted to make sure that I was here to
Thank you
participate
so
in this
much
very
for your
important
partnership.
webinar. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right. So next we've got the Executive Director of Sierra Donor Services with a special message.
My name is Sean Van Slyke, and I'm the Executive Director for Sierra Donor Services. We're the nonprofit organ procurement organization, proudly serving nearly 3 million Northern Californians and Northern Nevadans. We have an amazing team of professionals dedicated to saving and improving lives by connecting organ and tissue donations to the critically ill patients awaiting transplant. We strive to extend the reach of our generous donors' gifts to those who are always profoundly grateful for them. As a community-based organization, we're committed to fostering public trust and collaborating with our hospital partners to bridge the gaps in equity and access to transplantation for the diverse communities we serve. Internally, we do that by working to hire employees who represent the communities we serve and deliberately making space for diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations on a regular basis. Externally, we're focused on relationship buildings with key community leaders and organizations to develop outreach in those communities experiencing health disparities. We're excited about today's event as we celebrate Multicultural Donor Awareness Month. We have a panel of local speakers who will share their insight on the importance of organ and tissue donation and transplantation and the impact on the diverse communities we serve. Thank you for your time today, and if you haven't already considered doing so, please consider registering as a donor at sierradonor.org. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Sean. We are so thankful to have an executive director who's prioritized health equity in our work. Speaking of health equity champions, we're pleased to welcome a recent kidney transplant recipient, Chris Matteo. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Kyla. Hi, everyone.
So, Chris, I know you've had a transplant, and your transplant was just November of 2021. And what was that experience like for you?
It was, well, I just called November 5th my second birthday because, prior to that, I was on dialysis, kidney failure and everything. And, my wife and I were just like, no, there has to be a better way. We needed quality of life. I was only 38 or 30. How old was I? 37 at the time. And she's like, no way, we're going to be on dialysis. Like, we need to travel. I'm not taking this machine everywhere. There has to be another way. And remembered that you specifically were a transplant recipient. So we reached out to you to be like, hey, tell us what this is like. This sounds like a good option. But we didn't know anything about it. All we knew was, if you're going to get a kidney transplant or any type of transplant, you'd be put on a list and you'd probably wait for months, if not years, or maybe a decade. And I was like, no, there has to be another way. And so we learned that you can build your own list, have your own living donor list, reach out to friends and family. And because of my cousin Donovan, who helped, he was basically my ambassador to our family. he reached out and said, "Hey, Chris needs possible matches."
There
And
he
I
is.
start with the family. Oh, there he is. That's Donovan. Um, uh, we share a kid together. He likes to say we're kidney cousins. But yeah, he helped become an ambassador and say, "Hey, Chris needs a kidney." Reach out to cousins. We had about 12 people just in the first month sign up for this list, and it was just so reassuring and gave me so much hope. And so, with regards to organ donation in general, with a second chance of life, I love to be able to share the idea that transplant is a really great option in terms of a quality of life, and it's not as scary as people think. But the more people can sign up, the better chances, and the shorter time will actually happen, right? I mean, like I think you said on average 10, 15 years to wait for it, but we
Yeah,
can lessen that, right? If we can have more people sign up, right? It's just basic math. You have more people sign
exactly.
up, you have a better chance to get it. You don't have to wait as long. And it's life saving, it's life changing. And like Mayor Bobbie said, this is my second chance of life, and it just works wonders. I woke up literally. My wife told me I was a different person. She said, "You have more energy in these first
Absolutely.
few minutes of you waking up from surgery than you have in the last 2 years," and that means a lot coming from the person who sees me 24/7.
That's amazing. Well, Chris, I can't be happier for a friend and someone in the community who's an absolute advocate. And so I'm really excited to have you along with us as an ambassador. And I know that you'll continue to spread the message with us. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you, Kyla. Thanks for all your work on this.
Of course. Our next speaker is the chief of the chaplain service at the VA healthcare system in Reno. We've got Chaplain Sherman Baker to share some insight on organ donation in the African American community.
I became interested in organ and tissue donation while I was serving in the military. Out of those 30 years, I probably served at least a good 13 working in hospitals, medical centers. Growing up in the African American community, where we deal with a lot of the chronic illnesses of high blood pressure and diabetes and kidney disease and heart disease. And being from the state of Arkansas, you have that stroke belt there that goes from Mississippi and Louisiana and Alabama and Arkansas and probably spill over in Texas, where we love the foods that are not so healthy to our bodies. And so a number of family members and colleagues and friends within the community, uh, we're on transplant waiting lists and dialysis and so forth. And so for me, that opened up my eyes that um, the importance of whole health, the importance of taking care of yourself, the importance of giving back, either assisting and giving life. And so I have been an advocate of organ and tissue donation. It was very easy for me when I made that transition from military service to federal service. And when I arrived here and got on board, it was very easy for me to continue being an advocate for organ and tissue donations. It was Pope Francis who shared that organ donation is a testimony of love for our neighbor. And in the Old Testament scripture, New Testament scripture, Matthew, it talks about to love thy neighbor as thyself. So saving a life, healing those who are suffering is really a gift of love. And donating one organ is one of the ways that we can heal the lives of many. major Christian denominations, they would all agree that that organ and tissue donation is really an act of love. There are a number of past experiences, our past activities, our past trials that we as African American people, we know what happened back in the 40s and the 30s and the 50s. And because of that, when you talk to them about organ and tissue donation, they are not hearing anything that you're saying. They don't want to have anything to do with it, because for them, their mind goes back to the Tuskegee medical trial, and then the gynecological trial. I think that happened in the state of New York, and it goes back to the fact that there is a reluctancy within the African American community to fully embrace and trust the medical care. It's something that we all are working through this day. I encourage you to register as an organ, eye, and tissue donor, and to give the gift of life, a gift that is needed in our community.
Thank you, Sherman Baker. Our next speaker is not only a 5-time cornea recipient, but also gave her husband a kidney. Here's Miss Maria de la Paz Rodriguez with her daughter and her granddaughter to share her story.
Mi nombre es María Rodríguez y soy mexicana. Mi esposo también, éramos los dos del mismo pueblo. Y cuando a él tenía en el diálisis, yo estaba muy triste porque no le daban el riñón. Y hubo de que fuimos a San Francisco y la doctora preguntó si alguien, o sea, quién de todos íbamos a donarle el riñón. Y yo le dije si yo podía hacerlo. Y me dice ella, dice que sí, me iban a hacer la prueba para a ver si era compatible. Tocó la suerte que sí que luego dijo la doctora que sí había salido compatible. Y yo no le pensé más. Yo le dije, pues si se va a hacer, que lo haga. Yo de todo corazón. Para mí fue un orgullo que él tuviera unos años más de vida con su riñón, que viviera más o menos al nivel de que tuviera un riñón. Yo me quedé sin uno, pero yo estoy contenta porque yo lo hice, y yo quisiera que toda la gente pensáramos y lo hiciéramos para, o sea, donar a una persona que lo necesita, darle un poco de vida más, y uno nada más, lo único que tiene uno que tratar de llevarla a que no afecte nada el riñón. Entonces para mí, cada 6 meses me están haciendo la prueba del riñón a ver cómo está trabajando, y hace que 22 años, hace como 22 años que fue cuando le doné el riñón a él, y gracias a Dios hasta ahorita me dicen que estoy bien del riñón. Y pues a muchas personas yo les digo que se apunten para que lo hagan, para que lo puedan hacer también, más cuando es una persona que es de su familia, da más, o sea, se siente uno más grande. Ya, y para mí, pues yo es lo más feliz que soy así, con el riñón. Y creo yo que gracias a eso que hice yo también, me donaron, me pusieron la córnea de mi ojo, y Todo está bien, gracias a Dios. Muy bien.
Such a beautiful story. Muchísimas gracias to Miss Maria and her daughter Cecilia and granddaughter Gabby, who was also in the shot there. Our next speaker is none other than Sierra Donor Services Surgical Director, Dr. Beau Kelly. Hi, Dr. Beau Kelly.
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me?
Good, I can hear you now.
Excellent. I like to sometimes just move my mouth to just make sure that it's going to work before you can actually hear me say something. Let me see if I can share just to kind of drive our conversation here a little bit.
Sure.
And forgive the clutter of my desktop, but
no problem. So as our surgical director, you're on the other side of organ donation. You see, you know, the patients who have sadly passed on and made the most generous gift to many others out there. Yeah. I think what you do is just amazing and nothing short of a miracle, really.
Well, and you are a perfect example of what the capability of that miracle is. And I don't know that I have anything to do with that miracle more than just being a good coach and avid supporter. But let me, if it's okay, if I can share these slides with you, I just want to talk about a couple of things that I think might be important to the community and specifically to the POC community.
Please
can you see these slides? Okay.
There we go.
Okay, let me do this, and that should get us. How's that? Can you see and hear me? Okay.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So really what I want to address and sort of highlight for you, this is about awareness. And one of the things I think we need to keep in mind when we talk about awareness is the access to healthcare. And so one of the things that's come out of the pandemic, especially, is how poor the healthcare access is for the POC community and particularly for the Black community. And this is kind of hard to wrap our minds around, because what we've seen most recently, a report came out this past week, is that there's actually been a decrease in the number of individuals who don't have any healthcare. And so you would think that with healthcare, that would somehow improve the access to care. But what we really have found is that even with health insurance, if you have a significant disease and you're in the Black community, 1 in 4 of those individuals still has no access to healthcare. Now that becomes important when you start thinking about what healthcare actually represents. And what that is really is I think of it in sort of 3 phases. There's preventative care. You know, that's what we hear about in the education of how we live healthy lives through healthy habits. That also comes through wellness visits and checks and screening tests. But then there's also the acute care phase. And I think that's what most people think about when they think about healthcare. They think about that ability to go to a doctor or go to a hospital or go to an urgent care for a diagnosis or the treatment of a problem. But there's a third component that I think that people tend to forget about, and that's the end of life care. And so what does that mean as far as the decisions that you've made about your end of life? And I think it's just a loss. It's a lost opportunity for individuals to actually not be able to plan and think about their end of life care. And so for all of these phases of healthcare, it really comes down to your ability to be autonomous, meaning the ability to make your own decisions about what you would want for your healthcare, and then agency, the ability to use your voice to advocate for yourself, or have your family knowledgeably advocate for you for the things that you would want at the end of life. This challenge is no more apparent than in the organ donation and transplant community, because as you've already highlighted, Kyla, there's over 105,000 people that are currently waiting for the opportunity for an organ transplant. And now let's not be shy about this. Organ donation saves lives. Organ donation restores lives. There is literally no doubt about that. And so what we are talking about is the capacity and ability to save a fellow human's life. So, you know, even with a number of organ donations and transplants being performed, we're still not quite meeting the demand of individuals who have significant disease, including individuals who are in our POC communities. So I can highlight for you that one individual has the opportunity to save up to 8 lives. I would even argue 9 lives, like a cat, through organ donation, and hundreds of lives through tissue donation. People have tremendous angst about the things that they don't know about. And I would humbly offer to you that through the course of sort of the organ donation and transplant history, the healthcare providers have probably not done the greatest job of explaining to the community what donation is and what the donation process looks like. So really what we have here is a beautiful slide that Kyla laid out that just walks us through the phases of the donation process. It really all starts with education and communication of our communities and families. A lot of that we get through education materials that you'll see when you go to the DMV or when you turn on the TV. But then as you move into the donation process, it becomes about education of family care and the opportunity for donation. That then starts with a set of triggers or items that a patient may have that identifies them as qualifying for the opportunity to be an organ donor, and that comes in the way of what we would call a referral, or just a phone call from the hospital saying that there's a patient who meets those criteria for consideration. Then the next phase comes back to what I said about autonomy or permission. So there's the authorization process. There's then the opportunity for the organ procurement organization like Sierra Donor Services to have its specialists go in and work with the hospital system to figure out ways to optimize the situation for not only the family, but for all the potential recipients. Then we go through a process of what we call allocation, where we identify all of the best sort of suited recipients for the unique organs. Then there's the actual operation where the organs are removed and perfused and sent for transplant. And then last, but most importantly, there's a lot of aftercare that has to go on with the family so that they understand sort of the supported nature of the gift that they've given, and while concurrently, or at the same time, the loss that they're experiencing. So there's an ongoing follow-up with families that can span years, making sure that the family is comfortable as they can be with their decision. So just in brief, the authorization or permission process, I just highlighted here that sometimes that can take some time. So you see these times here, and I don't want you to focus on that too much as the law, but really just to set the tone for the things that are happening behind the scenes to make sure that the patient in question is appropriate for organ donation, and then as an organ donor, and as we move through the process, that they are receiving the proper care and evaluation. And sometimes that can take days. As the next part of the process, as I said, recipients are appropriately identified. And during this time, the family is given sort of the space and education that they need to move through the process as comfortably as possible. In the case of patients who are brain deceased, our brain is sort of like the control tower at the airport. It really navigates all of the central functions of our body to make sure that we don't have a ton of ongoing collisions. And when that's lost in the process of brain death, a lot of the systems and processes in your body start to break down. And so over the course of time, there does become a bit of a time constraint on just the function of state once a person is brain deceased. As I said earlier, there are logistics that are involved with getting the organ recovery teams that will be involved with not only the procurement of organs, but also the transplant of organs, and then the logistics of the hospital. So again, this entire process can sometimes take days, but really just know that it's a very orchestrated and well choreographed effort to ensure safety, not only for the patient and organ donor, but also for the care and need of the family. And so lastly, as part of this process, but again, most importantly, it's the family support and aftercare. And really that becomes the focus of the organ procurement organization like Sierra Donor Services at this point. They're really not engaged in the outcomes that may come from the transplants, but they then focus their lens on the care of the family who not only has participated in a very heroic donation process, but then also has experienced a significant loss of a loved one. So I just iterate lastly that, again, organ donation is about saving lives. It's about restoring lives. And so not only are patients with end-stage organ disease surviving, as you've heard, the people turn around almost immediately once they have functioning organs, but it then restores them to a capability that they may not have had in a decade. And so there's really the opportunity there to restore lives, to have children. I do a fair amount of pediatric transplant. And so to see children grow up to be healthy adults and make sort of all the same goofy decisions that we all make in young adolescence and young adulthood is very rewarding. So I just leave it with you that the POC community has the opportunity to not only advocate for their own care, advocate for their afterlife healthcare, but then they also have the ability to really make the choices that are critical in their own care and in the care of their loved ones. So I'll leave it there, and if anybody has any questions, Kyla, I'm sure will get them to me. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Thank you for all of your insight. We're truly lucky to have you on our team as our surgical director and speaking on behalf of our communities of color. So thank you so much. I'm honored to introduce our next video presenter. We have Teresa and Jesse Chairez, parents to Joe Chairez, a donor hero who saved the lives of 4 people as an organ and tissue donor.
As he was going through the academy and he was just getting done with the academy to become police officer, he came to me and he said, "Hey, Dad," he goes, "if anything ever happened to me out in the street," he goes, "I want to donate my organs." And I shook my head and I says, "Nope, it's not going to happen." He goes, "Dad," he goes, "do you realize the Hispanic, the Asians, the African Americans, they're the ones that need the organs the most and they help the least?" And I says, "I'm sorry, son. No." He goes, "Dad," he goes, "look, it's not going to cost you nothing." So the answer is no, you're not going to do it. But not knowing that when he became police officer, 5.5 months later out in the street, while he was making an arrest, he collapsed. And I believe with all my heart that he died right then and there. But as they rushed him off to the hospital, I knew in my heart that he was gone. My spirit was just saying, your son is not going to make it. I knew that. No one had to tell me, but I knew that. I said, God, what do I do? I told my son no, that he couldn't donate. When I said those simple little words, God gave me an answer right then and there. And he told me if I honored my son, I'd be honoring him. So I knew in my heart that I was going to change my mind because I wanted to honor God and I wanted to honor my son. And I'm just so thankful that my son educated me. And I'm so glad that God gave me the chance to change my mind. If I would have stuck to my guns and said no, I wouldn't be here today talking to people. The thing is,
he changed our life. He really totally changed.
Absolutely. yes, it hurt so much to lose our son, but something came out of it to help all mankind. I want people to be like my son Joe. Be like Joe. Be an organ donor. You can save up to 8 lives. And go through sierradonor.org and register to become a donor. And it's really simple. And be like Joe and become an organ donor.
Wow, it's such an amazing story from Jess and Teresa Chavez. We thank you so much for your generous gift. You know, Joe saved 4 people's lives and they continue to live on. And speaking of living on, his legacy lives on in the documentary Joe 238. We have clips from the trailer infused in that video there, courtesy of Colleen Stymist Wood, who generously also has created this documentary to share the story with the world. And if we have time at the end of our program, we can definitely share a trailer of that video. Our next presenter is another local physician, someone who I admire so much. Please join me in welcoming our next speaker, an advocate for health equity, Dr. Richard Perez, Chief of Transplant Surgery at UC Davis. Hello, Dr. Perez. How are you?
Hi, Kyla.
Thank you so much for squeezing us into your busy schedule. We're honored to have you here to represent UC Davis, our local transplant facility.
No, I'm definitely honored to be part of this webinar. I truly believe in the cause of organ donation and transplantation. And as a transplant surgeon here at UC Davis for 30 years now, I consider myself really fortunate to be able to participate in the care of so many transplant recipients and to actually witness the dramatic change in life or life-saving impact that organ donation has had. Just a little bit of a personal story. I'm actually a Pacific Islander. I grew up on Guam, and my father had severe heart disease when I was in college and ended up having a heart transplant back when I was in surgical training. And so I was able to witness myself and my own family the miracle of transplantation.
Wow.
As he went from being pretty much bedridden to leading a normal life, dancing in my sister's wedding, witnessing the wedding of all of his kids, and then seeing the birth of his grandchildren. So that really opened my eyes to the benefit of transplantation, and then eventually here I am now participating in it. So here we all know about the organ shortage, the crisis of too many people on the waiting list, the reality that a large percentage of those people on the waiting list are people of color. So our real mission here has been to do everything we can to make organ donation or transplantation possible to the largest number of patients that we can. And in doing so, we've really taken the approach that we leave no stone uncovered in trying to identify donors or utilize organs that maybe had not been traditionally used in the past. And what we found is that as we focused on this, we've increased transplantation for all people, but we've had a particular impact on some of the people that traditionally have been disadvantaged. We've really recently published our experience with transplantation in undocumented immigrants, and found that our approach of treating everybody the same and trying to give access to people who may have been at disadvantage has shown that outcomes after transplantation have actually been very good and comparable to other parts of the population. We've had a particular interest in pediatric donation and utilization, so transplanting from donors, very young donors, when tragically, obviously, infants or young children die. But we found that the impact of donation is very positive on the family when they know that the lives of their lost child live on in recipients. And as it turns out, a higher proportion of those organs from the small pediatric donors go to small recipients, which turns out that a higher proportion of those are women. And we know that women have had a decreased access to transplantation throughout the years. It's getting better, but it still remains. And that the utilization of these small pediatric kidneys has particularly impacted women patients. And then lastly, or a couple of other things, I guess, we know that the conversations about organ donation happen at the kitchen table, in the home amongst family conversations. And so we worked with you folks at Sierra Donor Services a number of years ago to develop this visual arts contest where high school students of all ethnicities, and we've actually had special categories for non-English entries where the students are allowed to utilize either a poster or a video or such, and then submitted them as a contest to promote the message of organ donation. And that's been very well received in the community, and we've had it's kind of unleashed the creativity of these young high school students to promote the very positive message of organ donation, and something that we would like to continue to do in the future. And then lastly, through a collaboration again with Sierra Donor Services, we are participants in the Pluralist initiative, which is utilizing technology to identify areas within the community that have a decreased rate of signing up to be organ donors, and then using social media and educational interventions to target those communities to promote organ donation. So it's something we believe in with all of our hearts, and we're working with all of our partners, including Sierra Donor Services, to make transplantation a reality to as many patients as possible. So thank you again for inviting me to participate. I truly consider it an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Perez, we're so thankful to have you as one of our local champions for health equity. And I feel like, we are just moving the dial more and more together as we all figure out how we can move forward together. I'm excited to see what we can come up with in the near future.
I definitely share your excitement.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mayor right here where our offices are located in West Sacramento. Martha Guerrero is a local advocate for organ, eye, and tissue donation. And here's her special message for us. Take it away, Mayor Martha.
Guerrero from the city of West Sacramento. And this is
Lawrence,
my grandson. And he's here to join me to convey why it's extremely important to support Sierra Donor. I never gave it a second thought to contribute and donate my organs should anything happen to me. Especially today with COVID, it has been extremely important for those in our most underserved populations who do not have access to the organs that are needed so that they can continue on with their life. So I urge all those that are able to participate in donating your organs to sierradonor.org to please check that box if you have an opportunity to do so, to donate your organs. Now more than ever before, it is important to provide those and support those who are in much need of an organ to be able to sustain their life, live much longer, and to be around and support their families. Thank you.
register now at sierradonor.org.
Thank you, Mayor Martha Guerrero and her grandson, Lawrence. He was adorable. Finally, our last speaker is a woman who received a liver transplant back in 1990 and is still going strong. Please welcome Miss Winnie Bender. Hi, Miss Winnie.
Hello, and thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. And I have, I'm a liver transplant recipient since 1990 at UCSF in San Francisco. And since I retired from teaching after probably almost 40 some years, and then I became a pastor at my church. So I'm a lay speaker in the church where I belong, and I talk about organ donation all the time. And as teaching school, I used to talk to my students about that. So I have been able to, I have 2 adult children and I have 4 grandchildren. And I think that's the greatest gift that anyone could ever give is the gift of life. I am a patient right now. I do go to UC Davis Hospital for my checkups, and I don't have to go back to San Francisco anymore. And thank you so much for inviting me. And I hope to be able to be on this program again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miss Winnie. I think you are a testament to what's possible with organ donation. A kind stranger, right? How many years ago in 1990 was able to give you a liver?
32 years.
32 years ago, and you're still going strong.
Yeah,
I hope this for everyone who's waiting to see a happy ending like yours.
So I have a great interest in whole body donation. So that's what I've been doing, getting a lot of information on that. And I have no problem with that. I'm ready, at any time, but I want to donate my whole body. If it can be used for anybody for the length of health.
Amazing. Well, I hope that people are inspired by all of the folks who spoke today, including yourself. Just a testament to the amazing miracles that we see every day with organ transplantation, from the donation side to the transplantation side. It's just an amazing thing to behold. Well, we have some time. We would love to show Joe 238, the trailer for the documentary chronicling the life of Officer Joe Chairez, who is a Sacramento Police Department officer.
I had a dream that me and him were driving in the car, and it was such a clear conversation, and I was like, why did this happen to you? And he was like, I didn't want to go, but I had to go.
And he says if anything happened to him out in the street, he wants to donate his organs as a police officer. And I looked him right in the eye and I says, nope, it's not gonna happen.
We met the man that received Joe's heart. I don't want to say resentful, but I kind of am, I'm still suffering. So it's kind of hard to, like I said, see somebody that's like, look how I'm doing, and I don't know.
I still have days where I reminisce about Joe, the things that we did together, but he's not here. He's not here. And that anger creeps up. It took the death of my son Joe to get me to do what I'm doing. I would have never joined the Red Cross for number one. I would have never known about Donate Life. God had to take my son for me to get out of that safety zone I've always been all my life.
My boyfriend that I have now, he's amazing. He's awesome. He's everything to me, but he knows that if Joe was here, he wouldn't be. It's been 12 years, but I feel like time froze right there. I feel torn after all this time. I still feel that way. I can't make excuses for who I am and how I am now, and a little reckless, and ride Harleys. And he gave me the outlook on life to not have any regrets.
He had a vision in life of not only becoming a police officer, but helping all mankind. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a vessel for God. He used my son not only to help me, but to help others.
You have to learn when it's good for you. Get back in the world and kind of decide what you want to bring with it.
I want to continue on honoring my son, because the more I help, the more healing I'm getting.
Such a beautiful tribute. I love that tagline that says, "Not all death is the end of life." So I want to thank all of my speakers today. Thank you so much for helping me share this message. Thank you, Mayor Bobbie Singh-Allen, Mayor Martha Guerrero, our Executive Director, Sean Van Slyke, Doctors Beau Kelly and Dr. Richard Perez, Chaplain Sherman Baker, our donor hero Joe's parents, Jesse and Teresa Chairez, thank you so much. And of course, final round of applause for our transplant recipients, Chris Mateo, Miss Maria del Paz Rodriguez, and Miss Winnie Bender. Thank you so much. And please, if you have been inspired by anything that someone has said today, such that you want to register to become an organ donor, please visit sierradonor.org. And from there, you can go ahead and register. And from there, you can save up to 8 lives with your donation, and you can enhance 75 people's lives through tissue and eye donation. So thank you in advance for making the decision to give the gift of life. I'm Kyla Aquino Irving, signing off. Thank you.